So my name is Olga. I am a co-founder of Ninty. So Ninty, we co-founded Ninty with Fatoumata Ali 3 years ago with the idea of basically the lack of support when it comes to women's health in the workplace. We've experienced that individually, but also working and talking to so many amazing women around us, different organizations. You really realize the lack of awareness and the lack of support when it comes to navigating different conditions related to sexual and reproductive health in a more general way. So what I'll do today, and please do feel free to jump in, interrupt, and we can have a nice chat together, is really to take a look into, okay, what is out there? We all talk about women's health there, but what is actually, what do we mean by that? What do we include? What do we exclude? Which type of initiatives already exist? For example, in France, where we are based, we often hear, yes, but these initiatives exist in the US. We don't necessarily have the data on how successful these initiatives could be in Europe. So how can we rationalize this topic, and how do we link that to the corporate world as well? So we'll talk a little bit about the work that we were able to identify through the Erasmus Plus project together with Experts Club. And then I also talk a little bit about different initiatives. And what we did, we somehow also asked people around us to share their dreams for women's health. So I would really love to hear yours at the end, and our ideas to really share them openly. And I'll share again also the link with you, so you can openly use this document the way you want, share. Hopefully it can be useful for your practices as well. So here is a little agenda. So as I mentioned, so why focusing on women's health in general? And by women's health, I actually feel like it's actually not just tailored to women as a gender, but it can be more inclusive. So what's the business case? What does it mean creating a supportive workplace environment for women's health? Which type of initiatives we were able to identify? And again, please share the ones that you perhaps see around you, and then different dreams that perhaps we'll share, and we keep collecting that. What was interesting, once we launched that little link, people still share different dreams with us, and I would love, as I mentioned before, to hear yours as well. So where are we? And I'm sure you've seen these numbers before, but it's sometimes great to come back to them anyway. Women's health, it's so many different conditions, so many different aspects, especially when it comes to us for the work time, because we do work for most of our lives. And I mean, I just collected here a few numbers. There are many more in the white paper, and I'm also happy to share and see what you perhaps seen in your practices and your own work. But when we look into that, for example, menstrual pain, severe menstrual pain affects at least 10% of women of reproductive age. And there are clear links between absenteeism and presenteeism at work, chronic pain conditions in general. 1 in 6 couples that are trying to procreate, are trying to conceive, basically are affected by infertility. It's both female and male, which results to 10 and 15% of couples globally. What is interesting is women mostly who would go through fertility treatments, many of them report symptoms of depression, anxiety, and as you can see here on the right, even 42% of them actually have experienced some suicidal thoughts around that. So fertility treatments do affect hormonal imbalances as well, and there is more and more research happening in terms of understanding that, but we definitely need more of that as well. Interestingly enough, when we talk about when it comes to severe pain and infertility, for example, endometriosis, which is a condition that we talk more and more about, but it still takes at least 10 years to confirm. Many symptoms get unnoticed. And at the end of the day, there is no cure. And so it's mostly lifestyle changes, nutrition, and similar to polycystic ovarian syndrome as well, which affects many women globally. Miscarriages, which are not on this list, it's astonishing. For example, it's been 10 minutes and we will spend 1 hour together. And according to the Lancet study in 2017, at least 23 million women actually suffer miscarriages every year globally, which actually represents at least 44 losses every single minute. So it's a lot of miscarriages, and up until recently, companies did not recognize, and also at the level of the state, we didn't have any support mechanisms available for women to take time off to process and go through the miscarriages and recovery from them. And finally, the other number I wanted to share is that 1/3 of our lives are spent in peri and postmenopause, which affects at least 1.2 billion women worldwide, which will affect by those numbers by 2030. Still, there is so much misconceptions and misunderstanding on the symptoms that affect us, the variety of different symptoms. Actually, most of those conditions are experienced in so many different ways. There is no one size fits all. So how do we think about holistic support for women in the workplace, but also more globally? Please do raise your hands. I can't see you, but if you have any comments, you want to add anything, I would love to hear what you think and how do you relate to those numbers as well. But when we look into that, it was like, okay, the market, well, the market, the numbers are really, really huge. And in a way, the business case for companies is also quite interesting, despite the fact that we're still more at the awareness stage of those issues in the first place. Here again, some numbers, it's a little bit too many numbers dropping, but this is part of the white paper. I would love to hear your opinion on that as well. So, for example, when we hear from one side that actually many companies don't even talk about those topics in the workplace and still consider them taboo. And at the same time, it's quite interesting to see so many being engaged, especially in the US, in the UK, to explore how do we engage and how do we support employees in the workplace. We actually see lots of interesting results. For example, a Gallup study shows that highly engaged workplaces see 41% reduction in absenteeism and 21% increase in productivity. For example, conditions like endometriosis, PCOS, even going through fertility treatments result in a higher percentage of absenteeism. So how do we deal with that? Secondly, we do know that we are more likely to advance in companies that provide comprehensive health and wellness support. Recent McKinsey report in here. Again, we can benefit from flexibility. As you can see, 67.7% of women report having great flexibility in their tasks. If the flexibility is allowed to work from home, for example, or have flexible hours. The number here in the bottom is not just for women's health, it's generally the cost of absenteeism for employers. So we really see that the numbers, at least in the US, 8 years ago, the numbers might be even higher now. It's at least $1,685 US dollars per employee. And given that women represent at least 50% of the workforce, I think we play a big role in that part as well. Again, something that I found super interesting is we do know, for example, from the work of the World Health Organizations, that every dollar invested in a workplace wellness, actually, we can expect a $4 return in improved health and productivity, which is already a very convincing argument as well in actually introducing those subjects in the organizational culture, or at least breaking taboo around them in different workplaces. And then the final part, also quite interesting as well. It's what we call the sandwich generation. So many of us are carers for elderly, but also for our kids in the households. And the study that was done quite recently actually shows that the flexible workplace culture benefits, especially women in this sandwich generation, and don't necessarily change anything for male colleagues who are not necessarily carers. So again, another compelling argument here as well. So we can see from one side, there are so many conditions, there is a need to do even more research on those subjects. And then from the other side is really the need to invest and really showing also compelling numbers. Again, mostly in the UK, in the US, not necessarily enough work that has been done in Europe, given the specificity of the healthcare system in many different areas. But this is just the start, and it really shows the need to introduce those practices in the first place. What I'll do now, I'll quickly move to some of the initiatives that we've identified, and I would love to hear later from you if you have seen those being introduced in practice, being effective or not at all. What else can we actually envision in the workplace to support women's health in organizations? And again, what is interesting, none of that is disruptive or very heavy to introduce. These are small changes, but they seem to be quite effective, at least to start practicing those elements. And first is what we see a lot in the work that Ninti does is really the need to create awareness around those subjects. So trainings for employees and managers, creating discussions around them. So launch information campaigns to increase awareness. For example, a company we work with created an ambassador program, so people can actually self-volunteer to be part of the ambassador program around fertility. They can then refer internationally to other colleagues, so they can become points of references internally when it comes to those informations. Provide a 24/7 information platform for employees to access verified content through third-party providers, for example, or even internally, using the care practitioners in the workplace. It can be a series of conferences organized with care practitioners as well. So we do quite a lot of that in practice. So to raise awareness, identifying a series of topics, and then providing basically information with the help of obviously care practitioners and that are part of the circles and the Ninti platform as well. The other part is introducing employee support and mentorship programs. So I think the ambassador program relates to that. So actually sharing the stories and advocating for better women's health support is so important. In some cases, it's just starting the dialogues and conversations. So we see circles where people who are initially perhaps a bit reluctant actually end up sharing and feeling so much better around those issues that affect mental health and women's health in the workplace as well. Care support, so for those organizations who are already going a bit further than just awareness, it's pretty much online support for employees, creating dedicated programs to support specific women's health conditions, regular health needs assessment, etc. Fortunately, when it comes to infrastructure, many companies start to provide menstrual products in the workplace, and they have designated specific rooms, etc. And some other initiatives, obviously, there is a lot of increasing awareness of the fact that we lack research to better understand women's health conditions and how they affect us in the long run. So how do we, as organizations, also participate in research studies? How do we monitor and evaluate the needs and effectiveness of women's health initiatives? What are the metrics that we need to put in place? And then how do we participate in external evaluations, report practices? For example, today we are co-designing the Women's Health Index, so we can rank different organizations and work together with them to better understand what are their needs in terms of support, what their collaborators think when it comes to women's health in the first place. And finally, how do we adjust work engagement and policies? Many of those initiatives, especially, for example, in Europe, we have new CSRD law where corporate social responsibility is introduced, and companies will be audited of certain size when it comes to introduction of those policies. For the social elements, supporting women's health, supporting collaborators, integrating inclusive work practices are so important. So how do we implement those leave policies? How do we even think about specific women's health policies in the workplace? And there are quite a few initiatives that we identified by different companies in the world. Also, for example, in France, with Carrefour introducing the leave for endometriosis, miscarriages, different support mechanisms, information platforms. Different companies like Deezer also having a specific employee well-being support and also tailored packages to women's health. So things are happening, but how do we measure the efficiency of those elements as well? And I'm happy to tell you more about those initiatives if you are interested or have questions. But to finish, because I wanted the presentation to be short, so we have more time to chat, is really to share with you some of the dreams that came from women that we asked, and as I mentioned before, please share yours as well. So it's like, okay, what better to us than actually women themselves when it comes to supporting women's health? So here you have a few. I let you read them yourself. For example, a workplace itself is designed, inspired by nature, offering many different ways to work together. So how can it be tailored? How we can be respected, and how many mainly women's cycle can be also reflected as well. And here there's another one. And I really like the idea of basically combining women's physical and mental health needs. How do we recognize and support them? How do we allow everyone to flourish and reach their full potential? And how do we talk about those subjects? And how do we make sure that not only women are present every time in the room when we talk about women's health, but also men? How do we make it not about gender, but about choices at the same time? And then how do we dream to integrate those elements into practice? I leave you with with the QR code if you want to download the white paper that I'm also happy to share a PDF with you in the chat later.